All right, good morning, 3Circle Church. It's so good to be with you guys today as we kick off a new series. I want to welcome all of our campuses joining us right now, those joining us online. We're going to dive into this series on a very little known book. It's actually the shortest book in the Old Testament, Obadiah. It's so short, it doesn't even have chapters. It's just one chapter. It just has verses, all right? And many people have told me that they've never even heard, not only have they not heard a series on Obadiah, they've not heard a sermon on Obadiah. Someone told me earlier they've been to church their whole life, they've never seen anyone quote Obadiah in a sermon. And so the talk around the church has been, how are we gonna do a series on this little book? But what we're gonna find out, as is true of all the Word of God, is that this happens to be a short book. It's gonna pack a very powerful punch. In fact, we're gonna go look at Obadiah for a few weeks because the message is so crucial. Obadiah is going to deal with an issue that we all deal with. And it is an issue that if we don't deal with it, it's going to deal with us. But it happens to be an issue that no one wants to admit that they deal with. But it happens to be insidious, and it's not just our generation, although I do think there are certain aspects to our modern environment that actually makes this issue flash more than it has in the past, but it's always been there from the very beginning of time. And today we're gonna look at this issue, and Obadiah is gonna help us see it. In 1912, there was one of the most amazing ships that's ever been built, and it became probably the most famous ship of all time. I know the year that it was built and sailed because my great-grandmother was born the year that the Titanic was built, and she always loved that. She always loved that she had a little history attached to her. 1912, this ship was built, known as Titanic. I still think that if Rose really wanted to, she could have gotten Jack on that flotation piece of wood that they had out there. How many of you think that, right? I'll never let go. But you did, didn't you? You did. So Titanic was a real ship. And they said this, and the issue that Obadiah is gonna deal with is on full display in Titanic, in the history of Titanic. It was built over in England, and Titanic was dubbed the unsinkable ship. They were saying, the owners and the builders and the engineers, they began to advertise that. The new technology they used, water-sealed compartments, the riveting that they used, which ended up being problematic, they said made this ship unsinkable. And because of that underlying issue that Obadiah is gonna deal with, that the Titanic builders and the Titanic owners definitely were dealing with, it became a tragedy. They took that mentality that had caused them to call the ship unsinkable, they took that into practice. And when they set sail, they immediately began to ignore, as they were on their way to New York, warnings about ice. The reason they ignored it is because they believed the ship was unsinkable, and also this issue that Obadiah is gonna deal with drove them to wanna not just sail the unsinkable ship, but beat a speed record headed to New York. And so they ignored the warnings that there were icebergs and that there were ice. Not only did they ignore warnings and go excessively fast, but on top of that, and maybe the most egregious example of them allowing the issue Obadiah deals with to take over them, they did not put enough lifeboats on the Titanic to handle the amount of people who were on the boat. All of this put together, when mixed with human error from the captain and bad communication with other ships in the area, ended up in the greatest maritime tragedy up until that point in history. 1,500 people died. It sunk in 2 hours. The unsinkable ship sunk in 2 hours after hitting an iceberg. Now here's some beautiful pictures of Titanic before she sailed. Here's another picture of her grandeur. But if you wanna know the issue that Obadiah is gonna deal with today, the one that we all deal with, I'm gonna show you what it looks like. This, my friends, is what Obadiah is dealing with, and it's pride. That is what pride looks like. Pride will take your life and put it on the bottom of the ocean floor. Pride will sink a marriage. Pride sinks ministries. Here's another look at what pride does. Pride will decay from the inside out. Relationships, attitudes, churches. It's brought kingdoms down. It has brought ministries down. It's brought pastors down and leaders down and husbands and wives. 30, 30 for 30 on ESPN stays alive because of this issue right here. We got the stories to tell. But here's the deal. The thing is that no one believes this will happen to them. In fact, in my years of ministry, and those are starting to pile up pretty fast, I've never had anyone, still to this day, I've not had anyone come in my office and go, man, the thing I'm dealing with is I'm a prideful person. Because there's something in us that does not want to admit that. Because we know in our core that there's something really ugly about pride. But I want to go ahead and tell you today, and this is going to be hard to hear, you're prideful. And I am too. We deal with this. It is in us. It is a human condition. It's a part of the fall, and it's something that we have to deal with, and it's something Obadiah is going to deal with. And it will sink the very things that you value so much. Normally in the past, back to school time, we think, man, the Lord typically leads us to preach somewhere in the scriptures where it's going to tell you, man, we're going to have a great year and encourage you. We decided to go a different direction this year and deal with something that is so crucial to all of our lives. Jesus dealt with the issue of pride. In Luke 14:11, he gives us a definition of it without even using the word. He says, everyone who exalts himself, that's pride. It's the elevator of self-exaltation. Everyone who exalts himself, here will be the result, will be humbled. And he who humbles himself will be exalted. Do you see the principle? He doesn't say might be. Eventually, this is what happens. This is how God deals with pride. And here's what I want you to understand. Remember our toolbox of understanding the Lord. Not that we came up with, it's the toolbox he gave us to relate to him. We could not relate to God unless he told us how to. And one of the things that he gave us in the toolbox is he told us, here's who I am. Here are my attributes there in the Bible. And one of them, we call it immutability. He is immutable. What does that mean? It does not mean that you can't make him be quiet, like immutable. You get that with the, anyway. Preacher joke. Okay, so no, immutable means he does not change. He does not change. He is the unchanging God. We all change. We should be really thankful for this attribute, by the way. When I was a little kid, I hated asparagus. I thought asparagus was a weed. It tasted like a weed. And I hated it. My parents tried to make me eat it. And that did not go well, and I'm going to leave that right there. And finally, they left it alone. And then one day, I had asparagus with a steak, and I thought, wow, that's really good. I changed. My taste buds evolved. I am now a connoisseur of the fine things in life, like asparagus. But I'll tell you what, you change too. Your tastes change, you change, your attitudes change, you grow, you learn. God does not. God's not learning new stuff. God's not self-improving. And so that means that you can depend on him. And it also means that when we see how God's going to deal with pride in the Bible, that's how he deals with pride now. He's going to deal with pride in a very powerful way. And that has not changed. So let's talk about pride. Write it down. Unhealthy comparison is the heart of pride. It leads to pride. And that's a gateway to all manner of sin. It can be argued that all sin is a result of pride. And here's why. Because anytime a human being sins, we're elevating ourselves above the authority of God. So the very nature of sin says, I am above God. I know what he has said. I know what his commands are. They're written on the hearts of human beings. And yet, and that's how we have a conscience, and yet we will violate that. So the moment I sin in any way, I have said in some small way or big, and Jesus said if you break one part of the law, you've broken it all, then that means that I'm saying I'm exalting myself above God. Sin in and of itself is a pride issue. I love what C.S. Lewis said. He said, pride, watch the nuance here, pride gets no pleasure out of having something, only out of having more of it than the next person. Now, why does he have to say uncomfortable things like that? And none of us want to admit it, but it's true. That's why, hey, you will love your house, you'll be thankful for your house until your friend invites you over to their new house, and if it's nicer, suddenly you don't like your house as much. You've got a normal pantry. You find out they have a walk-in pantry, which is what people do now. They're like fifth bedrooms for canned goods. And you go home and suddenly your house isn't as good. And it's because it's in us. And this thing we don't want to admit we deal with, we need to admit that we deal with it so that we can get on top of it rather than it getting on top of us. So Obadiah is going to be one of the only prophets in the Old Testament to prophesy against not Israel, but an outside nation. And that outside nation is the nation of Edom, a group of people called Edom, the Edomites. I'm going to tell you who they are in just a moment. But God is going to not warn them, and I want to tell you this, he had already done that. Through other prophets, he had warned Edom to change, to deal with their pride. They had not. The book of Obadiah is not a warning, it is a judgment. It is wrath. It is telling this nation, you did not listen to me, and this is how this is about to go. I'll go ahead and tell you the end of the story so that you know it. You can go all over this world and meet a lot of beautiful people, nationalities, incredible diversity. My wife and I have gotten to travel to places like Africa and Israel and Mexico, and it's just amazing. But I'll tell you who we never met, an Edomite. You haven't either, because they're gone. And the hammer that dropped is what we're reading. It's Obadiah. They do not exist anymore. The Edomites are gone. Why did that happen? How did it happen? Let's take a look. Obadiah 1. The vision of Obadiah is this: Edom will be humbled. You don't want to hear that. It's not, you might be if you don't change. Now it's come to, you're going to be humbled. Thus says the Lord God concerning Edom, we have heard a report from the Lord, and a messenger has been sent among the nations. Rise up, let us rise up against her for battle. Now let me tell you what's going on here. So God has decided that he's going to bring judgment now on Edom, and it's going to be ultimate judgment on them because of their pride. And their pride has lasted, we're going to see next week, hundreds of years. There's a history of it. They have elevated themselves above God and not listened and been proactive in their pride. And God says, I am done with this. You will be humbled. And the way he's going to do it is through the instrument of raising up other nations, godless nations, to do his bidding. They're going to bring this judgment on Edom, and they're going to destroy them. Now, who are these people called the Edomites? To help you understand that, we're going to give a little history lesson. You got to go way back in the narrative of the Bible. You go back to Genesis, and you remember there was Abraham, who had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham. And Abraham had Isaac, remember him? And then Isaac and his wife, she gets pregnant with she's got twins. The Bible tells us that they were like rumbling around inside of her. And the reason was they were struggling with each other. One's name is going to be Esau. He'll be the firstborn. The other one's going to be Jacob, the secondborn. But we know the story. Famously, Jacob, when they were born, was hanging on to the heel of his brother. It was like they were fighting. Because in the ancient world, the firstborn got everything, was in charge, was the one that ran the show. And so, you can write it down, the Israelites are descendants of Jacob, and the Edomites are the descendants of Esau. Now you know who the Edomites were. They were the descendants of Esau. Now let me remind you about who these people are. So Esau and Jacob are born into a very dysfunctional family. We've done an entire series on this. And they grow up. Esau came out of the womb hairy. He looked like a creature from Star Wars. The Bible just keeps telling you how hairy this guy was. And naturally, he becomes an outdoorsman and a hunter, and I guess you would when you look like the animals you're hunting, that's kind of the natural thing to do. Jacob looked very different than his twin brother, and Jacob became an indoorsman, so to speak, and he became a great chef, a great cook. And what happened here in the dysfunction of this family is Esau became the overwhelming favorite of his father, and Jacob became the overwhelming favorite of his mother. There was no balance. No one tried to hide any of this, and they grow up to be adults. And we'll see what happens. I'll give you the kind of the story of the birth and then the story of what happened later here. Genesis 25, 22 to 23, then we'll jump in the narrative to verse 31. First of all, let's go to the birth of these children. The children struggled together within her, and she said, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, not just two kids are inside of you, two nations are in your womb. Now we know who they are, the Edomites and the Israelites. Two nations are in your womb, two peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. And here's the surprise, the older is gonna serve the younger. See, God flipped the whole thing on its head, because Jacob, although he's born second, is going to be the one who God chooses to continue laying the pavement of the messianic line. That messianic line, that pavement, that asphalt that starts being laid with Abraham and the promise of Jesus. See, the whole Bible leads to Jesus. And just to take a little Jesus moment here, and that asphalt goes straight through Jacob, all the way to David, all the way to the New Testament. And then we have Jesus in Bethlehem who goes to Calvary and then walks out of a tomb 3 days later. And you can trace all that all the way back to Jacob. So the Bible's all doing this, and it's all pointing to Christ. And so what we have here is we have God saying to her, hey, I know how this normally goes. It's not gonna go that way. The younger will be over the older. And now we jump to when they're adults. Esau's out hunting the way Esau did. Kill stuff, bring it in. Jacob would whip something up with it. What a nice arrangement. And so you've got Duck Dynasty and Bobby Flay happening every day. And here's what happens. Esau comes in really hungry from hunting. Verse 31, Jacob has a trap set for him. He says, sell me your birthright now. Esau said, I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? And Jacob said, well, then swear to me now. So he swore to him, and he sold his birthright to Jacob. And then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and he drank and he rose and went his way. And then the Bible gives you a little insight here into the character of Esau. He says, thus Esau despised his birthright. He didn't just sell it, he didn't care about it. It just didn't matter to him. Esau was a man who wanted what he wanted right then. He was a walking microwave oven. Give it to me now, give it to me fast. And he would trade away what mattered most for what he wanted in a moment, in a heartbeat, and he did. And we know the story. Later on, suddenly Esau wants to backtrack on this situation, and it doesn't go well. And in the end, Jacob ends up with the birthright. This enrages Mr. Duck Dynasty guy. He wants to kill Jacob. We know the story. Jacob escapes, and then they start their families apart from each other. Esau, the Edomites, Jacob, the Israelites. And even though Jacob and Esau will eventually make up, Esau ends up leading a group of people that become unbelievers. They go further and further and further from God. Jacob ends up continuing laying the trail for Jesus, and he becomes the Israelites. He gets named Israel. It's the first time we see the name in the Bible. So you got all that history. And then you know the story. Those Israelites end up in Egypt, and the Edomites go their way. And what we're gonna see next week in week 2 is I'm gonna show you exactly what Edom did to the Israelites, stood by and allowed it to happen to them. Over the years, they allowed their pride to continually put them at odds with God's people. And that's what Obadiah now, fast forward, is dealing with. God has had enough of this group of people who continues to be prideful and allowing their pride, the posture of their hearts, to cause them to act against his will and against his choices. And by the way, this is not the first time. I don't want you to think that God was fast in his judgment here. Prophet after prophet had warned Edom to stop living in their pride, and they had chosen to ignore him. And now the time has come for Edom to be humbled. Now remember, as you sit here, you go, okay, that's an incredible story. What does that mean to us? Well, remember, I told you God is unchanging. And you're about to see how he's gonna deal with Edom, and he will deal with us not in the same way. And here's what's different. Here's the only thing that's different. Edom, they are unbelievers, so they're gonna be judged, punished for their pride. Jesus took your pride to the cross with him if you're a Christian. Now think about that. I want you to hear the power of the gospel. Your pride has been taken to the cross and nailed there with bloody spikes. So God does not condemn you. There's no condemnation for you and for those of us who are in Christ. He does not condemn you. Watch this. He corrects you. What God does with our pride that we all have, is he corrects it. He still hates pride. He opposes the proud. But what he does with us as a loving father is he knows that pride is like mold in a house. You better take care of it. It doesn't stop, it keeps going. You gotta handle business here. And so God lovingly sees the pride in our own lives and he squeezes on it, he touches it, he pulls it out of us. And he takes it very seriously. So let's look at it, Obadiah 2 and 3. He says this, behold, he's talking to Edom now, I will make you small among the nations, you shall be utterly despised. And here we go. The pride of your heart has deceived you. You who live in the clefts of the rock, in your lofty dwelling, who say in your heart, here's how pride sounds internally, who will bring me down to the ground? Now, what is all of this hide in the cleft of the rock, lofty places? What's all that coming from? Well, let me tell you what the Edomites did. The Edomites decided that they would settle in the hardest place to settle because they wanted to have protection, natural protection. And they found the most rocky, hard place to settle. It doesn't make sense, it's so hard. But if you want to protect yourself from others and you want to be above everybody else and you've got that in your heart, that's what you end up doing. In fact, we know exactly where they were. We know exactly, we could take you there. I almost got to go there until a little thing called COVID blew up my Israel trip years ago. That's a whole nother story. So here it is. Here's a picture of where they were. This is known today as the area called Petra. It means the rock. The Edomites did not carve that out. Later people did that. This is the exact area where the Edomites were. It's up in the mountains. It's cliffy. It's rocky. It's a natural fortress. That's why God says to them, hey, you think that you are so high up that no army can get to you, and that you can just be as prideful as you want. You can pop down out of the mountains and cause trouble. I'll show you that next week. And then go back up and no one can get to you. And he says, and that's caused you in your heart. See, that's the outward look of pride. The outward look of pride is all of the fortress building. But God goes to the heart. He says, but your heart has deceived you. And he knows what they're thinking. He says, all of these years, even centuries, you have thought in your heart, generation after generation, you have said in your heart, who will bring me down to the ground? And what God's about to tell them is, I'm gonna bring you down. I can get to where you are. Now, how do we relate to this? Well, some of us in this room today, we have our own fortresses built, don't we? Let's be honest about it, because again, the most dangerous thing about these 3 weeks we're gonna spend in Obadiah, for me and for you, is that you would hear this and think, and some of you are already there, and you're thinking, who you wish could hear this sermon. You've already got it dialed up. You're like, as soon as this thing goes public, I know who I'm sending it to. And so what I'm gonna ask you to do is pull the hands away from the phone, because it's for you. This is for you. It's for me, okay? The most dangerous thing you can do is to think that you're not dealing with this. We are. We live in a culture, y'all, where we are fortress building literally with our images. They did it with actual rock and stone. We have this thing called the ubiquity of technology, and we now have social media, and everything has a good and a bad, but let's talk about the bad side of social media. We now have a way to make everything about us. We know how to do it. All you gotta do is hold the phone at the right angle. You can knock 30 pounds off just by getting that angle just right. Whoa, right there. There it is. Hashtag blessed, hashtag life's awesome, hashtag look at me, look how great I am. Pastors do it, ministries do it, churches do it, moms and dads, ball teams. And if you don't think pride's alive, go to a little league ballpark at any moment. You may think all the parents are all for the team. No, they're for little Johnny, whether he's good or not. At 7 years old, they already see the future major league star that he is. And if the coach doesn't play little Johnny when they think that he should, he's gonna hear about it. Because I've been that coach before, and I heard about it. So we all deal with pride. And here's the thing. The first thing I want you to see is God is consistent in how he deals with prideful people. He's not changing. And so he's going to deal with pride very seriously. He wants it out of us, so he corrects it. He convicts us to get it out of us. He wanted it out of Edom, and they didn't listen. And so he's going to wipe them off the map. That's exactly what's going to happen here. Notice a few features in what we just read. First of all, notice that he goes to the heart. Most of us think, okay, that was prideful what you just said or what you just did. But God says those are the external. The sequence of pride is private first. The sequence of pride starts internally. That's why often it's late in the game that you see it flare like grease in a pan. And so I want to just pause here as we're going. I want to ask this question. Every gathering, I've asked it several times as we're walking through it. What area of your life do you struggle with pride? Where is it in your life? It's uncomfortable to think about it. I've gotten very few amens today, very few today. Where is it? Be honest about it. Where is it? And I can't ask you to be honest without me being honest. Look, my wife knows this from being with me a long time now. Pride flashes in me when I feel like someone's being condescending to me. I don't know why. I've justified it over my life. I've said, well, it's because I grew up maybe not having as much as the next kid did, and grew up in had an awesome family, but there's certain things that happen. I've got all my little justifications. And man, it rises up in me. If I feel like someone's being disrespectful, condescending to me, how dare, right? Suddenly the Rambo of 1985 comes out inside of me. There's a lion. We sing that song, there's a lion, don't you go shy on me? Well, I need to get shy sometimes. That thing inside of me. Because often it's not the Lion of Judah, it's my pride. I got to admit it. What about you? When does yours flash? And it's showing up in your marriage. It's showing up in your relationships. It shows up. And we kind of tamp it down. We justify it like the Edomites did for hundreds and hundreds of years. And God says, no, I want you to deal with that because pride is a heart issue that then becomes a behavior issue. So you got to dig around in there a little bit. Figure out what's going on. Where's that coming from? Because it did come from somewhere. And it comes from your heart. It is a posture of the heart. And he warns us here. He says, your pride, look at what he says, has deceived you. The Edomites believed their own mail. They actually believed they had become invincible. And their actions are going to show it. The Titanic guys believed that ship could not sink. They really believed that. It sunk in 2 hours, y'all. It is one of the great examples of human hubris in all of history. 2 hours. The thing is on the bottom of the icy Atlantic, and 1,500 people are dead. The Edomites believed that they were untouchable and God's going to wipe them off the face of the earth. They're gone. And with us, I'm not saying, listen, you're not going to be condemned for your pride. You're going to be corrected. But what God is saying is there is no end to the destruction and problems that pride is causing and will cause in your life if you don't get on top of it. Because it is deceptive. Let's talk about 3 ways that it deceives us. It deceived Edom. It deceived the builders of the Titanic. It may be deceiving you right now. And the first one is this. Pride deceives people to believe that they are justified in their attitudes and actions. It justifies. It says, well, there's a reason I'm that way. And we justify it and call it something other than pride. Watch out for that. Secondly, pride deceives people to believe that they are immune to consequences. I can keep thinking this way and being this way, and it's not going to affect me. And that's why you can't just fix the behaviors. You got to fix what's going on in your heart. You got to ask yourself, why do I think I deserve that? Why do I think that for some reason I'm better than them? Where's that haughty spirit coming from? Me, I have to ask myself, why do I think I should deserve to not be condescended to? Like, why does that flare inside of me so much? Right? I mean, Jesus went to the cross. No one's ever been condescended towards more than Jesus. He was the Son of God and got treated like a dog. They wouldn't do their dogs the way they did Jesus that day. Roman citizens could not be crucified. It was illegal. This was to show the world what a piece of trash this human being is, to put him on a cross. He went there. So who am I, as a child of God, to be so offended if anyone were to speak condescendingly? See how that works? It is so insidious inside of our hearts. It's deceptive. It'll make us think we're immune to consequences. The Edomites were up in the hills. They thought no one can get to us. And then finally, pride deceives people to believe that they are in control. And Edom, for years and years and generations, thought, we got this. We picked the right spot to build. No one can get to us. So we can do what we want. And God looks at them and says, the time has come. And not only am I going to bring you down from your lofty place, I'm going to bring you down altogether. The world's going to see my wrath. See, we think we're in control. Famously, the first murder in the Bible happened, and I'm convinced that Cain was surprised by that murder when he murdered his brother Abel. I don't think he saw that coming. You know the story, right? It was pride. Cain, Abel bring offerings to God. Abel brings one that God accepts. Cain brings one that he doesn't. There was no problem. God wasn't angry with the offering. He's teaching them. They don't know how to worship him yet. So God's saying, hey, from here on out, that's the kind of offering I want. That's not the kind I want. Cain becomes angry. Why? Comparison. He compares himself. God tries to settle Cain down the way he did Edom, the way he will you. And he even tells Cain, go back and read it in Genesis. He says, sin is crouching at your door like a lion, like a tiger, like an animal. And it wants to get on top of you. You're going to have to get on top of it. And then one day it flashes. That's what pride does. And you're like, where did that come from? But with him, it flashed. And before he knew it, he's standing over his dead brother with a rock in his hand. And he becomes the first murderer in history. Why? Because pride works that way. If you don't get in control, it gets in control of you. And he goes on, verses 4-9. Though you soar aloft like the eagle, though your nest is set among the stars, you know what that means now, those lofty dwelling places. He says, from there I'll bring you down, declares the Lord. If thieves came to you, if plunderers came by night, how you've been destroyed, would they not steal only enough for themselves? If grape gatherers came to you, would they not leave gleanings? How Esau has been pillaged, his treasures sought out. All your allies have driven you to your border. Those at peace with you have deceived you. They have prevailed against you. Those who eat your bread have set a trap beneath you. You have no understanding. Will I not on that day, declares the Lord, destroy the wise men out of Edom and understanding out of Mount Esau? And your mighty men shall be dismayed, O Teman, so that every man from Mount Esau will be cut off by the slaughter. Now, what is this all about? Well, God says, hey, he says, you're going to know it's me behind this. Because if it were just thieves, petty thieves just grab stuff and run. But I'm not going to stop until I finish the job. God says, you're going to know this was me. It's going to be so utterly complete. Your wise men that think they have it all figured out are going to be in awe of what's about to go down. You don't want to hear that, do you? That's not what we want to hear. We want to hear the Lord's blessings, but you can't understand his blessings unless you understand this. This is what it means when the Bible says God opposes the proud. My friend Tony Merida gave us this statement. I meant to put his name there, but I'll just tell it to you. He's a great theologian, and he wrote a commentary on Obadiah, and he said this: an inflated self-estimation always leads to ultimate insubordination. I saw him last week and I said, hey man, I'm doing Obadiah. Thank you for the commentary. He said, you're going to use that. You're going to use my line, right? You're using my line. He's really proud of that line. It's a good one. Because if you continue to puff up, it'll lead you to sin. That's what that means. And that's what happened with Edom, and that's what happens with us. And I'm just telling you, I think the reason Obadiah is so important to us is because we all deal with this, and we're in a culture. Can I just be honest with you for a minute? It is in our politics. It is in our national conversation, and it's on all sides. And social media, I watch social media, it is cringy how self-gratifying we are. It is unbelievable. 3 generations ago, people would have called that like bragging and boasting. Today, it's just hashtag blessed. It's so insidious, we have to watch out for it. Proverbs 16:18 says, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. When I got out of college, my wife and I had an opportunity to go to a nationally known church, TV ministry, everything. We went there. I was a really young guy in Atlanta. And being the young guy on staff, I got the job of picking guys up from the airport that would come and preach or speak at our church. And there was this nationally known guy that I got to go pick up, and I was excited to meet him. I was like, man, this is going to be awesome. I get a little time with him, bring him from the airport, get him something to eat. My job was to then bring him to the church. And so I picked this guy up, and immediately when this guy got in the car with me, I sensed, man, I'm just telling you, I sensed a level of haughtiness and self-indulgence that I just couldn't believe. I couldn't believe his rudeness to me. That was nothing. He was a big dog. He wanted something to eat, told me right where we were going. Fine, it's my job. We then go to a restaurant where he's rude to every person that waited on us, that served us, just rude. And I was like so put off by this. And I remember he goes and preaches. And man, this guy could preach. He preaches at our church that weekend. We called it, growing up, this guy could really shuck the corn. That's what they say, a guy that can really do that. Preach the paint off the walls. People just loved him. And I was sitting back there going, this is unbelievable. If only these people could have seen how he was at that restaurant, how he talked to me in the car, what he said about that waitress. If only these people saw that. And the Lord grabbed me by the heart, and it was as if the Lord impressed upon my spirit, Chris, the same thing you're seeing on display in that guy is in you. It's in you. A part of me began to see that the reason I got the assignment to go get that guy is for the Lord to show me what it looks like if you don't get that stuff under control fast. It becomes ugly. It becomes insidious. 8 years later, I got a call from a good friend of mine who was on that staff with me. He said, hey, you hear about what just happened? I said, no. He said, pull it up, Google that name. Total life destruction. Ministry imploded. Because pride will make you think I can do whatever I want. And the Lord says, no, that's not how this is gonna go. Let me give you a few things to watch out for today as we in week 1 in a very light manner today, right? Watch out for insecurity. Watch out for comparison. Watch out for entitlement, thinking you deserve something. Watch out for materialism. That one can get prideful so fast. And then finally, watch out for drive. Drive, something that we need that gets stuff done. But if you're so driven that you're starting to keep score, and people do it, parents do it with their kids. Is my kid cool enough? My kid at the right place, the right time? We're all playing this game. Watch it, because it's destructive. And Obadiah is trying to tell the Edomites and us. So what do we do with all of it? 1 Peter gives us one last look today, and we'll go further next week. 1 Peter 5:6. Humble yourselves. That's the command. Humble yourselves. We'll learn how to do that next week. Don't make God do it. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God. Here it is. So that at the proper time, he may exalt you. In other words, in a world where we all want to self-build our platforms and self-importance, what if we just relaxed and trust the sovereignty of God? Because watch this. God not only knows how to raise us up, most importantly, he knows when to. When. He's got the clock. Don't take that clock out of his hands and trust him. This is what it means to trust the Lord in this. And my hope is today, how many of you, this is already speaking? Obadiah is speaking to you today. Okay, awesome. We got a little thing around here we've been talking. We're thinking attendance will cut by half next week. Making room. So we had a space problem around here. I started preaching about a pride problem. We don't have a space problem anymore. Don't miss next week. This is a message for today. This is an old message for us today. Now here's my hope. My hope is today that you would look at yourself. Use the mirror first, not the binoculars for someone else. What did this say to you today? What's he showing you today? He's showing me a lot just by teaching it from my own heart. Be introspective. That's my hope today. I'm going to pray so that we can release our campuses, and we'll talk to you guys right here for just a moment. Jesus, thank you for your word. As we do local ministry in each of our campuses, would you bless that sacred time in Jesus' name?